right. So tonight we're going to actually do another song, but in a different way. We're going to actually turn up to the book of Psalm, chapter 90. So we're going to do a song a little different way here. This is actually a prayer song of Moses. And I came across this psalm we've all passed through it, I'm sure, but the other night I was reading to Darren, and we just came to this psalm. So it just struck me. I'm like, all right, well, that's the one. We're going to read about that one. So it's just, like I said, it's a prayer, and I'm not a very poetic person, so that's where I struggle with the psalms sometimes. I'm very more a Proverbs man than a Psalms man, but that's just me. So I challenge myself to look at these very interesting poetic things, and Moses wrote them, David wrote them, Asaph, all these great guys who wrote these songs, and I can appreciate a song, even though I can't write one or really understand it all the time. I'm more into the music, but we're going to take a look at this one. All right, so Psalm 90. If you turn with me there, would say verse 1 here. It says, Lord. So this is a prayer directed toward Yahweh, to God. Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. So he's calling him God, as a people, their dwelling place. Then you could call that their refuge, a shelter, a home. They're at home with God. He's their dad, he's their father, and he's the one that has brought them out. And it's not only to their generation, but also to all that were before, even with Abraham all the way through. And then it will continue actually forever and ever, because he's given promises to his people for all generations till the very end of time, which doesn't actually end. So forever and ever and ever. And so God never changes in that sense, but he's their dwelling place. And he's talking about the eternal nature of God, which we cannot understand. It's just something to consider, that it's beyond us. We're in this place. We're in a time, space, matter. And these are things that we consider, especially in this context. When we're flying, we need to know about time, space, and matter. If you're, how long is it going to take you? Where are you going to go? And are you going to hit anything on the way there? That type of stuff. You need to know these things. So things that God is outside of, God's in control of, God has created, are things that are our limitations. But we can see how great God is, and that he even formed these things, and he knows everything from everlasting to everlasting, a concept outside of our frail human nature that we have today. It's just, beyond us. Verse 3, you turn man to destruction and say, return, O children of men, for 1,000 years in your sight are like yesterday when it is past, and like a watch in the night. You carry them away like a flood. They are like asleep. In the morning, they are like grass which grows up. In the morning, it flourishes and grows up. In the evening, it is cut down and withers. All of us have to at some point mow the lawn. But considering those different, he's just comparing time and the perspective that God has on time as opposed to the perspective that we have on time. And even considering, think about yesterday. Yesterday is past. Could we really track down everything that we did yesterday and mark it up and consider that it was well spent? There's plenty, especially our days, and technology and all this stuff we waste our time on. Time is something we don't have a lot of, as we're going to get into here in this psalm. It's an interesting concept. Time is the only thing that never stops, and we really can't control that it goes, but we can control what we do with it. And so the importance of that, and in God's perspective, he's got all the time laid out. He understands the beginning from the end. He's the one that's been through it all. He's seen it, and it just goes so fast for us. So just considering it's like yesterday. It's like watching. It's like a shift in the night. If you ever do a night shift, or if you're doing a busy shift or a boring shift, it may be even more of a comparison. If you have nothing to do and you're just sitting there waiting for time, but then all that time is just ticking away and it'll never come back. It's just really a little crazy to think about if you really put it in that perspective, especially how much time you really have, as he's going to get into a little bit later. He says here in verse 7, we have been consumed by your anger, and by your wrath we are terrified. You have set our iniquities before you, our secret sins in the light of your countenance. For all our days have passed away in your wrath. We finish our years like a sigh. The days of our lives are 70 years, and if by reason of strength they are 80 years, yet their boast is only labor and sorrow, for soon it is cut off and we fly away. I mean, there's the cliche reference to flight there. But considering these things, so even in the time that we have, even how quickly it goes by and the amount of time we waste, if you will, the things that don't count toward anything that's good or enduring or moves on, those are the things that we consider. And even the secret sins he's talking about, everything's going to be laid bare before God. And actually, if we want to pull that thread all the way to the end of the book, we see in Revelation 20, there's this thing called the white throne judgment. It says here in verse 12, I saw the dead, small and great, standing before God, and books were opened. And another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged according to their works by the things which are written in the books. The sea giveth the dead who were in it, and death and Hades delivered up the dead who were in them, and they were judged, each one according to his works. Then death and Hades were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. And anyone not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. God will make righteous judgment. His consuming fire will consume the things that are not of righteousness, the things that in this Old Testament context, the things that they were doing, the wrong things weren't covered by the blood of Christ yet. So the perspective that they have is different, but they can see the picture. And the Exodus, the people of the Exodus day, they lived through the Passover. They kind of had this concept that there was this deliverance from the world that they actually lived through and were taken out. And they're going to talk about even passing that on to the future generations. These are things they lived through. But he's talking, then he brings in a perspective like all the stuff that we do and the wrong things that we do, we should definitely have a reverent fear of God and the things that he says when they're wrong, they're wrong. And we don't get away with these things. Everything is noticed. There's nothing that goes unnoticed. That's kind of like the world we live in. Everything's on camera. Everything's open to the world. There's nothing that's hidden, really. You might think you're hiding it, but to God, it's all visible, and you're never going to get it past him. You're going to need that forgiveness that's only in him. And even if you get 70 years in your life, and maybe 80 if you're lucky, right? And that's by reason of strength. That's the boast is only in labor and sorrow. If you work hard enough and keep yourself healthy, you might make it to 80, you might make it to 90. But he's saying you don't get that long. I mean, for me, I'm already halfway there, and I'm still considered a young puppy, right? But I mean, we don't have all that time. When you're 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 16, you think that you're invincible and you have all the time in the world, and every day is like boring and it's not a big deal. But considering that we don't really have that long, I was talking to someone the other day about the dash. There was the funeral procession. There was a pastor talking about that dash in between your years and your birthday and your death day. That dash is very small in comparison to eternity, right? And that's what he's referring to. God, who is eternal, gives us the opportunity to live for a certain amount of time. We don't know how long that is. It could be 70, it could be 80, it could be 20, it could be 1. Some children experience none. It just is what it is. But what do we do with that time that God's given us? What are we allowing ourselves to be put into? What are we investing ourselves in? And of course, even at that point, within that soonness of the 70 to 80 years at the most, it's cut off and we fly away. We either, we separate and we either fly up or we fly down. That's really, there's only two ways about it. So that's what he's referring to here. Who knows the power of your anger? For as the fear of you, so is your wrath. So, with that, teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. This is a request of God. He's asking God on the behalf of the people to teach them. We're here to learn too. Hopefully we're learning a little bit from this. We're all, receiving from the Word of God, but we're learning about aviation. Make us teachable. We want to gain these things. We want to make the most out of it. We want to be people who are willing to listen and learn, be teachable people, all the way up till the end. There's no one that's arrived and they're not able to receive anything. That's something even fundamental we were learning in karate as a family, is that everyone has something to offer, and everyone has something to give, and everyone has something to gain. If you're willing to receive it, it's important to be that teachable person, like he's asking God of right there. And the gain that we get is that heart of wisdom. It's really talking about your godly character. As you're gaining those things, those attach and those stay, and you can develop those things. That's your inner man. That the heart is on the inside. It's not the thing that's pumping your blood. It's who you are. That's changing. We're asking God to teach us to be like him. And the New Testament gives us so many benefits because of the life of Christ and what he offered through eternal life through his son that Paul expounds on, and Peter and John and all these great men who received from Jesus and were able to pass that on. We get to receive that even as Gentiles. That's the amazing thing as we're going through Ephesians. We can understand that that's something that's amazingly granted to us by grace through faith. He goes in here in verses 13 through 17. He gives us a few things to be glad about, to think about. Return, O Lord, how long? And have compassion on your servants. Console or comfort us. Give us that comfort that only comes from you. Oh, satisfy us early with your mercy, that we may rejoice and be glad all our days. Satisfy is actually to be filled to excess, to be overflowing. That's what he's saying. Make us overflow with your mercy. Mercy is not getting what you do deserve. That's a concept they had more of a concept of back in this day versus the grace that was given, bestowed upon us here. But it's still there. The mercy of God is strong. And we can rejoice and be glad all our days. We can know that we're under the mercy of God. He's able and willing to forgive us these things. Verse 15, make us glad according to the days in which you have afflicted us, the years in which we have seen evil. Now that sounds a little weird. The word afflicted there could be translated occupied, busy with, or even oppressed. Think about where they came from. This is Moses talking about their experience coming out of the affliction of Egypt, the years they have seen evil. They've been afflicted. They've been held captive. They were not able to leave, and they were delivered by God. He's like, make us glad according to the days in which you have afflicted or allowed us to be oppressed for your glory, to show yourself strong and pull us out and make us your chosen people and bring us into this land that you've promised us. That's what they're looking for. Let your work appear to your servants, verse 16, and your glory to their children. Let that pass on. And for us even today, our work, he's like, let your work appear to your servants. We don't want to do work that we come up with. As Christians, as people that follow Christ, we want to do the work that he comes up with. We don't need to make ourselves busy. We don't want to fill our time with busy work. We want to fill our time with the things that God finds important through the Spirit. That's the big difference. You can look like the busiest person in the world and doing all the things that are important in your eyes, but in the end, it's just a waste of time. If it's not for the Lord, it really is a waste of time. I mean, there are things that are necessary, like cooking your food and eating it and cleaning your home and being a good steward. But in the end, there's tons of other opportunities where we're just doing things that are just for us or just are not necessary. And we want to be looking for the work that God has for us, that he can give us to do that'll actually carry on, something that your kids will remember. Like I remember how my dad and mom always did the dishes, and that was awesome. Well, yeah, we had clean dishes. That's pretty basic. But like, what else did they do? Did they do anything for the Lord, for the kingdom of God? Is that the legacy you are able to leave? That's something that you do when you appeal to God and give us the work. Have it appear. Deliver us to the work that you want us to do. And then in the verse 17, let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us and establish the work of our hands for us. Establish the work of our hands. The beauty there, the word for beauty of the Lord, could be delightfulness, pleasantness, kindness, favor. He's saying, let the kindness or the favor of the Lord our God be upon us. That side of God that's willing to give and willing to pour out on us the good things, the blessings. And in that, establish the work of our hands for us. Like he said before, we want him to be the one that's showing us what to do. We want to be receiving from him, not making for ourselves. And even in what we're doing here, this is equipping for missions. This is equipping for service to the Lord. These are things that we learn so that we can pass something on. So we want the Lord, through the Spirit, to help us in the time we spend. If it's here learning about aviation or if it's somewhere else learning about something else, just seek the Lord and what he wants for you. And he'll breathe that beauty will be upon us, just like he was for the Israelites back in the day here. So, amen. I'll pass this to Morgan, and then I think we'll just eat after that, right? All right. Let me get that slide. You know what page you're on? Which slide?
Page 12, maybe? Page 12. Okay. All right. I'll pray, and then we'll get started here. Dear Lord, thank you for this evening. Thank you for those who are able to make it tonight. I pray that the lesson and the rest of our time of fellowship would be sweet. I just pray, Lord, that you would have favor on us and establish the work of our hands, even tonight as we're learning about aviation. Thank you for that sweet, sweet promise, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. All righty. Wait a minute. So tonight is the last night for the summer, and we'll be picking up in the fall. If you guys are interested in continuing and finishing the year-long training, just keep in touch with us, and we'll, myself or the Bartletts, and we'll make sure you know all the info you need to know. And it's loading. All right. No worries. Take your time. All right, pop quiz from last week. What is well, for those who are here, what is a cumulus cloud? What does it look like?
It looks like a large puff.
A large puff. That's a good description. Yeah. And how about maybe from the week before? Can somebody give me an explanation of what density altitude is? It could be whatever words in your own words. This is a hard one. This is kind of a hard one. Go ahead.
It is how much air is in the air you're in.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah. I see what you're saying there.
Like there are a bunch of layers of air on the Earth, and each layer has the same amount of air, but each layer gets slightly bigger the higher you get. So the first layer has a nice amount of air that you can breathe, and then it just gets smaller and smaller. And there's still the same amount of air in each layer that just has less. It's just less there. Just can't really get to it as easy. And it's easier to move through it because they're not as packed together.
Yeah, the air molecules are not as packed together. I think you got it right there at the end. Perfect. Awesome. So we got the slides up. So we'll watch this video, and then we'll go over some questions on the video. And, yeah, go ahead.
A thunderstorm makes its way through 3 distinct stages before dissipating, as shown above. It begins with the cumulus stage, in which lifting action of the air begins. If sufficient moisture and instability are present, the clouds continue to increase in vertical height. Continuous, strong updrafts prohibit moisture from falling. The updraft region grows larger than the individual thermals feeding the storm. Within approximately 15 minutes, the thunderstorm reaches the mature stage, which is the most violent time period of the thunderstorm's life cycle. At this point, drops of moisture, whether rain or ice, are too heavy for the cloud to support and begin falling in the form of rain or hail. This creates a downward motion of the air. Warm, rising air, cool, precipitation-induced descending air, and violent turbulence all exist within and near the cloud. Below the cloud, the downrushing air increases surface winds and decreases the temperature. Once the vertical motion near the top of the cloud slows down, The top of the cloud spreads out and takes on an anvil-like shape. At this point, the storm enters the dissipating stage. This is when the downdrafts spread out and replace the updrafts needed to sustain the storm. It is impossible to fly over thunderstorms in light aircraft. Severe thunderstorms can punch through the tropopause and reach staggering heights of 50,000 to 60,000 feet, depending on latitude. Flying under thunderstorms can subject aircraft to rain, hail, damaging lightning, and violent turbulence. A good rule of thumb is to circumnavigate thunderstorms identified as severe or giving an intense radar echo by at least 20 nautical miles, (nm), since hail may fall for miles outside the clouds. If flying around a thunderstorm is not an option, stay on the ground until it passes. For aviation purposes, a ceiling is the lowest layer of clouds reported as being broken or overcast, or the vertical visibility into an obscuration like fog or haze. Clouds are reported as broken when 5/8 to 7/8 of the sky is covered with clouds. Overcast means the entire sky is covered with clouds. Current ceiling information is reported by the Aviation Routine Weather Report, METAR, and automated weather stations of various types. Closely related to cloud cover and reported ceilings is visibility information. Visibility refers to the greatest horizontal distance at which prominent objects can be viewed with the naked eye. Current visibility is also reported in METAR and other aviation weather reports, as well as by automated weather systems. Visibility information, as predicted by meteorologists, is available for a pilot during a pre-flight weather briefing. Precipitation refers to any type of water particles that form in the atmosphere and fall to the ground. It has a profound impact on flight safety. Depending on the form of precipitation, it can reduce visibility, create icing situations, and affect landing and takeoff performance of an aircraft. Precipitation occurs because water or ice particles in clouds grow in size until the atmosphere can no longer support them. It can occur in several forms as it falls toward the Earth, including drizzle, rain, ice pellets, hail, snow, and ice. Precipitation in any form poses a threat to safety of flight. Often, precipitation is accompanied by low ceilings and reduced visibility. Aircraft that have ice, snow, or frost on their surfaces must be carefully cleaned prior to beginning a flight because of the possible airflow disruption and loss of lift. Rain can contribute to water in the fuel tanks. Precipitation can create hazards on the runway surface itself, making takeoffs and landings difficult, if not impossible, due to snow, ice, or pooling water and very slick surfaces. Air masses are classified according to the regions where they originate. They are large bodies of air that take on the characteristics of the surrounding area, or source region. A source region is typically an area in which the air remains relatively stagnant for a period of days or longer. During this time of stagnation, the air mass takes on the temperature and moisture characteristics of the source region. Areas of stagnation can be found in the polar regions, tropical oceans, and dry deserts. Air masses are generally identified as polar or tropical, depending on the temperature characteristics, and maritime or continental, based on moisture content. As shown above, a continental polar air mass forms over a polar region and brings cool, dry air with it. Maritime tropical air masses form over warm tropical waters like the Caribbean Sea and bring warm, moist air. As an air mass moves across bodies of water and land, it eventually comes in contact with another air mass with different characteristics. The boundary layer between two types of air masses is known as a front. An approaching front of any type always means changes to the weather are imminent. Shown above are the 4 types of fronts, which are named according to the temperature of the advancing air relative to the temperature of the air it is replacing. warm, cold, stationary, occluded. A warm front occurs when a warm mass of air advances and replaces a body of colder air. Warm fronts move slowly, typically 10 to 25 miles per hour, mph. The slope of the advancing front slides over the top of the cooler air and gradually pushes it out of the area. Warm fronts contain warm air that often have very high humidity. As the warm air is lifted, the temperature drops and condensation occurs. The picture above depicts a warm front advancing eastward from St. Louis, Missouri, toward Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. At the time of departure from Pittsburgh, the weather is good VFR, with a scattered layer of cirrus clouds at 15,000 feet. As the flight progresses westward to Columbus and closer to the oncoming warm front, the clouds deepen and become increasingly stratiform in appearance, with a ceiling of 6,000 feet. The visibility decreases to 6 miles in haze with a falling barometric pressure. Approaching Indianapolis, the weather deteriorates to broken clouds at 2,000 feet with 3 miles visibility and rain. With the temperature and dew point the same, fog is likely. At St. Louis, the sky is overcast with low clouds and drizzle, and the visibility is 1 mile. Beyond Indianapolis, the ceiling and visibility would be too low to continue VFR. Therefore, it would be wise to remain in Indianapolis until the warm front had passed, which might require a day or two. A cold front occurs when a mass of cold, dense, and stable air advances and replaces a body of warmer air. Cold fronts move more rapidly than warm fronts, progressing at a rate of 25 to 30 miles an hour. However, extreme cold fronts have been recorded moving at speeds of up to 60 miles per hour. A typical cold front moves in a manner opposite that of a warm front. It is so dense it stays close to the ground and acts like a snowplow, sliding under the warm air and forcing the less dense air aloft. The rapidly ascending air causes the temperature to decrease suddenly, forcing the creation of clouds. The type of clouds that form depends on the stability of the warmer air mass. A cold front in the northern hemisphere is normally oriented in a northeast to southwest manner and can be several hundred miles long, encompassing a large area of land. Fast-moving cold fronts are pushed by intense pressure systems far behind the actual front. The friction between the ground and the cold front retards the movement of the front and creates a steeper frontal surface. This results in a very narrow band of weather, concentrated along the leading edge of the front. A continuous line of thunderstorms, or squall line, may form along or ahead of the front. Squall lines present a serious hazard to pilots, as squall-type thunderstorms are intense and move quickly. The above picture shows a flight from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, toward St. Louis, Missouri. At the time of departure from Pittsburgh, the weather is VFR, with 3 miles visibility in smoke and a scattered layer of clouds at 3,500 feet. As the flight progresses westward to Columbus and closer to the oncoming cold front, the clouds show signs of vertical development, with a broken layer at 2,500 feet. The visibility is 6 miles in haze with a falling barometric pressure. Approaching Indianapolis, the weather has deteriorated to overcast clouds at 1,000 feet and 3 miles visibility with thunderstorms and heavy rain showers. At St. Louis, the weather gets better with scattered clouds at 1,000 feet and a 10-mile visibility. A pilot using sound judgment based on the knowledge of frontal conditions would most likely remain in Indianapolis until the front had passed. When the forces of two air masses are relatively equal, the boundary or front that separates them remains stationary and influences the local weather for days. This front is called a stationary front. The weather associated with the stationary front is typically a mixture that can be found in both warm and cold fronts. An occluded front occurs when a fast-moving cold front catches up with a slow-moving warm front. As the occluded front approaches, warm front weather prevails, but is immediately followed by cold front weather. There are two types of occluded fronts that can occur, and the temperatures of the colliding frontal systems play a large part in defining the type of front and the resulting weather. The above picture depicts a cross-section of a typical cold front occlusion. A cold front occlusion occurs when a fast-moving cold front is colder than the air ahead of the slow-moving warm front. When this occurs, the cold air replaces the cool air and forces the warm front aloft into the atmosphere. Typically, the cold front occlusion creates a mixture of weather found in both warm and cold fronts, providing the air is relatively stable. A warm front occlusion occurs when the air ahead of the warm front is colder than the air of the cold front. When this is the case, the cold front rides up and over the warm front. If the air forced aloft by the warm front occlusion is unstable, the weather is more severe than the weather found in a cold front occlusion. Embedded thunderstorms, rain, and fog are likely to occur. Weather can pose serious hazards to flight, and a thunderstorm packs just about every weather hazard known to aviation into one vicious bundle. These hazards occur individually or in combinations, and most can be found in a squall line. For a thunderstorm to form, the air must have sufficient water vapor, an unstable lapse rate, and an initial lifting action to start the storm process. Fronts, converging winds, and troughs aloft force upward motion spawning these storms, which often form into squall lines. A squall line is a narrow band of active thunderstorms. Often it develops on or ahead of a cold front in moist, unstable air, but it may develop in unstable air far removed from any front. The line may be too long to detour easily, and too wide and severe to penetrate. It often contains steady-state thunderstorms and presents the single most intense weather hazard to aircraft. It usually forms rapidly, generally reaching maximum intensity during the late afternoon and the first few hours of darkness. The most violent thunderstorms draw air into their cloud bases with great vigor. If the incoming air has any initial rotating motion, it often forms an extremely concentrated vortex from the surface well into the cloud. Meteorologists have estimated that wind in such a vortex can exceed 200 knots. If the cloud does not reach the surface, it is a funnel cloud. If it touches a land surface, it is a tornado. An aircraft entering a tornado vortex is almost certain to suffer structural damage. Since the vortex extends well into the cloud, any pilot inadvertently caught on instruments in a severe thunderstorm could encounter a hidden vortex. Potentially hazardous turbulence is present in all thunderstorms, and a severe thunderstorm can destroy an aircraft. Strongest turbulence within the cloud occurs with shear between updrafts and downdrafts. Outside the cloud, shear turbulence has been encountered several thousand feet above and 20 miles laterally from a severe storm. Updrafts in a thunderstorm support abundant liquid water with relatively large droplet sizes. When carried above the freezing level, the water becomes supercooled. Supercooled water freezes on impact with an aircraft. Clear icing can occur at any altitude above the freezing level, but at high levels, icing from smaller droplets may be rime, or mixed rime and clear ice. Thunderstorms are not the only area where pilots could encounter icing conditions. Pilots should be alert for icing anytime the temperature approaches 0 degrees Celsius and visible moisture is present. Hail competes with turbulence as the greatest thunderstorm hazard to aircraft. Supercooled drops above the freezing level begin to freeze. Once a drop has frozen, other drops latch on and freeze to it, so the hailstone grows, sometimes into a huge ice ball. Eventually, the hailstones fall, possibly some distance from the storm core. Hail may be encountered in clear air several miles from thunderstorm clouds. As hailstones fall through air whose temperature is above 0 degrees Celsius, they begin to melt, and precipitation may reach the ground as either hail or rain. Rain at the surface does not mean the absence of hail aloft. Possible hail should be anticipated with any thunderstorm, especially beneath the anvil of a large cumulonimbus. Hailstones larger than 1/2 inch in diameter can significantly damage an aircraft in a few seconds. Generally, visibility is near zero within a thunderstorm cloud. Ceiling and visibility also may be restricted in precipitation and dust between the cloud base and the ground. Pressure usually falls rapidly with the approach of a thunderstorm, rises sharply with the onset of the first gust and arrival of the cold downdraft and heavy rain showers, and then falls back to normal as the storm moves on. This cycle of pressure change may occur in 15 minutes. If the pilot does not receive a corrected altimeter setting, the altimeter may be more than 100 feet in error. A lightning strike can puncture the skin of an aircraft and damage communications and electronic navigational equipment. Although lightning has been suspected of igniting fuel vapors and causing an explosion, serious accidents due to lightning strikes are rare. Nearby lightning can blind the pilot, rendering him or her momentarily unable to navigate either by instrument or visual reference. Nearby lightning can also induce permanent errors in the magnetic compass. Lightning discharges, even distant ones, can disrupt radio communications on low and medium frequencies. Turbine engines have a limit on the amount of water they can ingest. Updrafts are present in many thunderstorms, particularly those in the developing stages. If the updraft velocity in the thunderstorm approaches or exceeds the terminal velocity of the falling raindrops, very high concentrations of water may occur. It is possible that these concentrations can be in excess of the quantity of water turbine engines are designed to ingest. Therefore, severe thunderstorms may contain areas of high water concentration, which could result in flameout and/or structural failure of one or more engines. We hope you learned a lot. Please help us spread the word about Pilot Training System, and we look forward to further servicing your flight training needs.
Alrighty. So we learned a lot about thunderstorms in that video because thunderstorms are, well, I won't give away one of the questions at the end. Actually, last week, one of the questions was what is the most dangerous type of cloud, which we're going to get into now. But can anyone answer that? Yeah? Close.
Cumulonimbus.
Cumulonimbus. Good. Good. Okay, so let's start with the first question here. What are the 3 stages of a thunderstorm? Can anybody remember that? Go ahead, Ethan.
The cumulus stage, the mature stage, and then the dissipating stage.
Very good. And what is the significance of these 3 stages? The cumulus stage, what's happening in that stage? Anybody? Go ahead. Yeah, you have a lot of updrafts, and the thunderstorm is building at that point. It's like the building phase. What signals the mature phase? Yeah, go ahead.
Precipitation begins and surface winds increase.
Very good. Yeah, at that point you're going to have up and down drafts happening, and precipitation or rain or snow or hail or whatever. And then the last phase is the dissipating stage, and what kind of things characterize that, or what thing characterizes that? Go ahead. If you don't know, okay. You had a smile like you knew. Any ideas?
In the dissipating stage, it stretches out, and therefore it stretches out in the higher atmosphere, and therefore the original cloud shrinks, and more precipitation occurs.
Yeah, so what's a thing called an anvil forms, so the cloud, very good explanation. Do you want to just teach the class? And then So you've got your thunderstorm, and then an anvil is like this kind of thing that forms the cloud arm that forms off. And underneath here, so the dissipating stage is also characterized by downdrafts. So there's not any updrafts anymore, and it's just downdrafts. And so you've got a lot of downward moving air, which is not good to run into if you're flying low to the ground, because you don't want to get shoved lower down to the ground. Also, hail is a big danger there. So, okay, next question. Which of these cloud bases would be considered a ceiling? Clear, few, scattered, broken, or overcast? Yeah, go ahead.
Overcast.
Good. There's one other one. Ethan? Yeah, broken, overcast. So these are the different, next semester when we get into weather services and we can look at how to find out what the weather's doing and how to look up the weather. We're going to get more into this. These are different definitions for how many clouds are covering. So you can have clouds, and if it's just like a cloud here, cloud there, it's probably going to be few or scattered. And then when you get to broken and overcast, then you have a thicker layer of clouds. And broken and overcast is considered a ceiling. That'll be important in when we're looking at weather regulations and that sort of thing. Okay, what are some hazards of precipitation? There's a few different answers, so you can throw one out there. Go ahead, nice. Turbulence.
A
Yep.
turbine would exceed its maximum, intake too much water.
Yeah, so it could cause problems with turbine engines. Anything else? Any other ideas?
Structural damage.
So yeah,
Radio damage.
so from hail, that could be caused by hail. Some other things, low. Yeah, go ahead.
Sparks freezing and lift decreasing.
Very
because of
good.
ice.
Yeah. Ice and frost can destroy lift creation on the wing, which is not a good day if you're in the air. So that's very good. You guys covered most of it. You could get rain in the fuel. You could have wet or icy runways. So those are a couple other things. And low ceilings and visibility, because if you have rain or snow really thick, it's hard to see very far when you're flying. But you guys covered a lot of really good things, so very good job. Okay. Is an air mass with Maine as its source region, is it going to be maritime or continental? And then will it be polar or tropical? All right. Is it going to be maritime or continental?
Maritime.
And will it be...
Continent.
Yep, you're right, maritime. And will it be polar or tropical? Polar, good. So those are the two, the different ways you can, it's either cold or warm temperature, and then high humidity or low humidity, or dry or wet. So, perfect. You guys got that really good. What are the 4 types of fronts? Does anybody, or you could just name, yep.
Cold, warm, stationary, and something. Occluded.
Yes, occluded. Very good. Yep, warm, cold, stationary, and occluded are the 4 types of fronts. Very good. And bonus question. What color is a warm front? Sorry, you guys are raising your hands. I'm not even looking. Ethan. Red. And what shape is the warm front?
A triangle.
Are you sure?
Cold fronts are triangles.
So the warm front is red, and
It's
it's
a semicircle.
this. Wow, that's a horrible semicircle. I don't even know what that is.
Semicircle.
It's a little like sideways
Right
hill.
side up semicircle. And
There you
cold
go.
fronts are upside down triangles.
Yeah, you can think of cold fronts cold fronts are what color? Yes, blue. And what shape is it? Yep, the triangle. So you can remember it like the blue is like icicles that are cold icicles. And the red could be like a sunrise. All right, now the fun ones. So you've got a stationary front, and both of these have, so stationary and occluded both have both shapes. All right, I'll just draw it real quick, and then I'll let you guys decide which one's which. How's that? All right, so stationary and occluded. One of them has the symbols just on one side, and one of them has the one on one and the other on the other. Yep.
The one on opposite sides is stationary.
Very good. And so the other one is occluded. And the way you can remember that is a stationary front is it's how they're formed. So you've got here in this case you've got a cold front that's moving that way. So that means there's cold air on this side and warm air on this side, a warm front or warm air there. But it's stationary, so it's just not moving either direction. But and then the occluded front is when one type of front catches up. Usually it's a cold front that catches up to a warm front. So a cold front like came up and kind of caught up with a warm front. So that's why they're both moving the same direction. They're on the same side. Very good, guys. What type of weather generally comes with a front? Yes.
Precipitation.
Yes. Usually you've got some precipitation. Anything else you guys can think of in the video? Go ahead.
Cumulonimbus.
You're going to have clouds. Yes, clouds. So depending upon what kind of front, cumulonimbus or nimbostratus, you're going to get, yes, you will have clouds, and this is true. So some other things, turbulence, there's going to be a change in temperature, obviously. If you've got a front moving through, that means there's a big mass of air that's a different temperature. So you have temperature change, usually pressure change, and generally reduced visibility in the area that the cold front is moving through, or the warm front, whatever front it is. Okay, I already asked this question earlier, so somebody want to answer? What is one of the most dangerous weather phenomena to pilots? Go ahead.
Thunderstorm.
Yes, thunderstorms, cumulonimbus clouds. Very good. And one thing about thunderstorms, you've got a couple different types of thunderstorms. You've got just your generic thunderstorm, which is already super dangerous. And then you have squall lines, which is like a long line of thunderstorms. And then you have embedded thunderstorms, which it's when there's like a bunch of other clouds around, and a thunderstorm forms in the middle of just like a bunch of other clouds. So like you can't really see the thunderstorm until like you run into it. If you're flying, so this is definitely more applicable when you're flying instruments, because at that point you'd be flying through the clouds. But it's important for us to recognize too that there's embedded thunderstorms, which are basically inside a bunch of other clouds, so they're invisible until you're inside and you're like, oh wow, there's hail and lightning and tornadoes. You know what I mean? So like that's like that. Those are the most dangerous kind. You've got like thunderstorms, and then under thunderstorms, two kind of like nasty versions of them: the squall line and embedded thunderstorms. So very good though, very very good. Okay, what 3 things are necessary for a thunderstorm to form? Does anybody remember this? Go ahead, Ethan. Yep, you need a lifting action and 2 other things. Does anybody remember? Yes.
Water.
Yes, water vapor. Water vapor. You need water vapor. And the last thing is an unstable lapse rate, which just means that the air has a tendency to move. If it gets pushed up, it's going to have a tendency to continue to move upward. So those three things combined is something that pushes the air up, an initial lifting action, and moisture, and then the air that has an unstable lapse rate, which means it's going to keep moving up once it's pushed up. That's going to create a thunderstorm. So those things are necessary. Okay. Hey, somebody should be able to tell me this because I accidentally answered the question. What is a squall line? Yes. Yeah, and they're usually in a long line. So a squall line is like a narrow band. It's like in Florida, a lot of times they'll just in the summertime around like 1:00 in the afternoon, there'll be a bunch of thunderstorms just all over, but just spread out like all over the state. But a squall line is a little different, where it's like a long, thin band, basically. Very good though. All right, I'm going to the next slide. What are two types of ice? Yeah.
Clear ice and a rime.
Good. Clear and rime ice. And what's the difference? Does anybody know? Okay.
Clear ice coats the plane and makes it, then decreases left. Rime hits the plane and bangs it up.
Kind of. So I think you're thinking hail.
Yeah.
Rime ice, but that was close. So like visually, clear ice forms like a smooth, clear layer over the wing. So like, let's say this is the wing. And then you have clear ice would be like super cooled water droplets, like water that's like below freezing, but it's still liquid. And it hits the front of the wing, and it forms like kind of a smooth surface. And then rime ice is like a little more jaggedy. It's like kind of more like snow. I guess the texture is sort of more like snowy, but they're both super dangerous. The clear ice, they're both super dangerous because, can anybody tell me why? We talked about this last week, I think. Yep. Yep, it destroys a lift. So that's the main dangerous thing. One thing about the clear ice is it forms really quickly, so a lot can build up really fast. So clear ice is pretty dangerous. Extra dangerous. It's like dangerous versus like extra dangerous. I don't know. So, but the idea is you want to avoid icing there. Where can hail be expected in a thunderstorm? I think I already talked about this. Ethan. Underneath the anvil. Very good. And we have, I think, discussed many of these. So let's just finish off with what are some of the dangers of a cumulonimbus cloud or thunderstorm cloud? Yes, give me one.
Cumulonimbus is simply a very large cloud. Thunderstorm clouds are cumulonimbus in very unstable air. I thought it said difference.
Oh, nope, dangers. What are some dangers?
Lightning for starters.
Yes, lightning's one. Do you want to?
Hail, rain, precipitation, other forms of precipitation, lightning, extreme, powerful downdrafts.
Yep.
And obscured views that you can only see so far.
Yep. Did you have any other ones?
No, I don't, but
Pronouncing it, that's a danger. Trying to pronounce cumulonimbus. Very good. All right, guys. That's going to wrap up our class for tonight. It's a little bit shorter tonight. We've got lots of food in the back, so please help yourself. And that's all I got for you. Thanks for participating.